Since I was first engaged in conscious thought, I have been searching for truth and meaning. Finding truth is pretty easy. War is bad. All people should be treated fairly and equally. The color of your skin or the language that you speak ought not matter. Be nice. Truth comes easily to me, and even as I've grown older and life has brought its trials, in some cases tribulations and complications, truth as I see it personally still remains pretty easy to find. Now I understand for some others, truth is bent. It's made much more difficult. And so when I hear about the new and improved miracle cleaner that is being advertised, I know that most likely it is neither new nor improved, and it is most certainly not a miracle. Truth can be different. Truth can change. And while the truth of fairness has been in some ways extremely easy for me, when it comes to spiritual truth, truth has undergone no small amount of change. Because I believe if you're really searching, there is going to be change. There has to be change. And if you don't find any change, you need to ask yourself why. I was raised in a very strict religious upbringing as a Jehovah's Witness. Jehovah's Witnesses, that's their name. That's what you and I call them. That's what they're known as. But what you might not know is what they call themselves privately. And that is simply the truth. While many faiths today believe that their version, their interpretation of religion is correct, and will act and take personal action or inaction because of those views, I'm not sure that there is any, and I don't know of any, who refer to themselves simply as the truth. To a young man growing up in this very smug atmosphere, truth became a very loaded word, a potent word, a word that I tried hard to balance between what came easy to me, war is bad, all people should be treated fairly and equally, the color of your skin or the language that you speak ought not matter, be nice, and Jehovah's Witnesses practiced and preached intolerance for the rest of the world, and in some cases, even themselves. Truth for me began to change. I began to search. As that young Jehovah's Witness growing up in the 1960s, I was educated about the human spiritual experience or truth and meaning very much the same way I was educated about human sexuality, and that would be not at all. And so I discovered my spirituality much the same way as I discovered my sexuality, accidentally, furtively, without guidance, moved by overwhelming inner tides, and with some attached sense of shame. I longed to be an altar boy, to light the menorah I could see in the window of my neighbor's house. I secretly read and reread pagan stories and myths as a believer. The Eastern religions enthralled me. I prayed to one God after another, and at times rejected all gods. I was fascinated by the hidden life of monks. I yearned for someone, anyone, to take my childish capacity for devotion seriously. To those who raised me, and the rest of Jehovah's Witnesses, being the truth was more than enough, and all other texts prayers, sacraments, holy objects, myths, fairy tales, all of it were of the world and thereby false. But without any outlet and without any discussion, for my emerging sense of mystery and wonder, I came to feel to the contrary, and my truth continued to evolve and change. Those changes of truth and meaning came even faster after I left my upbringing behind. It has not always been easy, but I had, and I still have, an unshakable belief in people, and even more importantly, in the goodness of people. For every murderer, there are countless people who feed the hungry and care for the sick. For every thief, there are a multitude who give money to charity, and on and on and on. And because of that belief, that unshakable belief, my truth could no longer accept a single truth or a single way to touch the divine. And as it turns out, many, many others struggle with truth and meaning also. Unitarian Universalist Blue Jay Adamets put it this way: if you accept that God created everything, you have to accept that she created a universe with a great deal of diversity, and in many, many ways of getting the same job done. I can look out my window and see literally hundreds of species of plants, dozens of species of birds, and at night you can see big stars, little stars, and so on. Would it make sense, then, that the same God or goddess would turn around and say, you can only know me in this one way. You must worship me only with this set of words. You must do these things in this way and no other. I'm still thinking about that. Well, it sounds like Blue Jay is involved in a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Well, I say, Mr. Adamets, so am I. The word search comes from a Middle English word, searching, meaning to travel about, to investigate. Its first known use is in the 14th century. Pretty old, as words go. I think it's interesting to think about that meaning, to travel about, to investigate. How many of us, you and I, are really searching? Or is what we are doing, in fact, just studying? The word study, on the other hand, is defined this way: the activity or process of learning about something by reading, by memorizing facts, attending school, etc. Quite a bit different, I think, from the word searching. For change, for real change, we have to travel about. We won't change if we are only opening one book and memorizing it. I have made a point of investigating and traveling about, searching, just like many, if not all of you have been doing, trying to make sense of a world so vast it is almost inconceivable, too big to take in and fully understand, and then to consider the possibility of another world. Well, it certainly requires a lot of travel and a lot of investigation, to say the very least. Let me give you another example. My upbringing taught me that God was an older, white, bearded man. You know, just like many of the other much more mainstream Christian faiths. Mine was a very patriarchal upbringing with no room for anything of the feminine. Certainly not a divine goddess, not even Mary. Some of my first thoughts were, well, that is not very fair. And it certainly ran against the truth that I believed about everybody being treated equally, and it was not nice. And while on its surface that might seem to be very simplistic, it has always been an important part of my personal search for truth and meaning. And so it has been easy for me to arrive at the notion of a goddess. Why should there only be a God? To believe in one God only is studying but one book, memorizing one book. A milestone for me, to be sure. Another milestone in my personal search for truth and meaning is about the very nature of God. For many, it is a non-issue. He is at the very top of this life and the next life, alone, and the only one. And for others, as we are Unitarian Universalists, God does not only not matter, but he does not even exist. And guess what? Both of those views, I believe, are okay and are okay. When you are searching for truth and meaning, your journey is going to cross many beautiful paths and directions to take. I have thought about this, as I've said, for a long time. My problems are the same ones that many people have. If there is but one God, why does that God allow suffering? When armies go to war and they're both praying for the same God, how does that work? Why isn't God nice? And of course, there's really, is there even a God? Or is God just a myth? I'm not alone. Many searchers have been there in this philosophical conundrum. Well, I can tell you this. Most assuredly, I do not have the one single answer. I'm still searching for it. But these are some of the things that I have come to believe is truth. I have learned God is personal. God is local. God is not one size fits all. And for many, God isn't even necessary. And for a few tens of millions of us or so, God isn't a man, but God is a woman. God is different for different folks. Why is God such a difficult subject for Unitarian Universalists? I tend to believe it's because in many cases we have collectively allowed the definition of God to come from outside of us, outside of the fellowship. We have opened one book and we have memorized it. Instead of trusting our own individual travels and our own investigations as we search for truth and meaning and a shared collective meaning. And that is the problem. Finding truth and meaning with somebody else's God. I pretty much believe that we're all here today because we are unable or unwilling to do that, and that the nature of divine is one of the largest, if not the single largest, struggle going on within Unitarian Universalism. How do we collectively respect the notions of God as Unitarian Universalists? The fourth principle tells us a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. That means that not only is every path welcome, be it God or none, goddess or many, because as Unitarian Universalists, as individuals, we find transformation through many different processes. We save and we are saved and we serve many different gods. Or perhaps instead it has always been, and it just is, a belief in ourselves and in humanity. Whichever. It is an important part of who we are, a core element of Unitarian Universalism. And respecting those very individual beliefs collectively is vital to the well-being and health of our faith. The individual search for truth and meaning, like that of love or suffering, is not arguable. It is not up for debate or discussion. No one else can deny the reality of those sensations when you feel that you have had them. In 2003, a sermon that has sparked much of the ongoing controversy over the language of truth and meaning within our denomination, then UUA President William G. Sinkford speaks of a long night sitting in the hospital with his teenage son who lay near death. Sinkford recalls that he felt the hands of a loving universe reaching out to hold them both. The hands of God, the spirit of life, the goddess. The name is unimportant. President Sinkford said, "I knew I did not have to walk that path alone. That there is a love that has never broken faith with us and never will." No one can argue that Sinkford did not have the experience he said he did. The question will always be whether our faith community is collectively prepared to help him understand, process, and honor that experience, that search for truth and meaning. Our faith, this faith, is beautiful. And I believe that I have found it and you have found Unitarian Universalism because of searching, traveling about, investigating. We have set aside the one book, the one way, the one truth, the memorized truth, and have created each of us our own path. And that truth is ever changing, ever shifting, and ever growing, as it should. But meaning, the meaning we most often find is when we are together in community. We find it through inspiration and community. We are moved and inspired to social action, to not stand alone on the sidelines of injustice, but to come together as a community of purpose in love because of a truth. A love beyond belief. We feel inspired, excited, filled with new ideas and new possibilities for making our life and this life and our world a better place. We also feel supported and sustained by the feelings of being part of a human community, a vast reservoir of compassion and strength. We find meaning together within our faith, free and responsible search for truth and meaning. It is a large part of what has brought us in truth, individually, together, and is what gives meaning to our community of Unitarian Universalists. Many questions remain for me personally in my search for that ever-shifting, ever-evolving, ever-changing truth. But I am so glad that I have you to share those questions with, and that together with you we will all find the inspiration and the community in our shared meaning. Blessed be.